Okay, we're glad that everybody's here. Let me shut this off.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to this edition of Residential School Survivors Stories. We've gone beyond the stories. So we've taken a look at it from all different kinds of angles, but that's what makes it quite a interesting topic for those of you who don't know about residential schools. Well, now with these past topics we've talked about, it kind of covers all the different effects and that have been done to our people and our generations. Because our younger generations regarding intergenerational trauma, they're beginning to understand and beginning to notice that there are effects of that residential school that are still quite noticeable and affect our way of looking at things, and in turn it also has affected the parenting that has gone on with our people. And that's not just with Siksika, but with all these different First Nations. So today, one of the topics that we're going to take a look at is the issue of reconciliation. But before we do that, I'd like to do some little bit of reconciliating here. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blackfoot Crossing Historical Park, for allowing us this opportunity to share our story, share our viewpoints, our opinions, our facts, and it's not fake news, and allowing us the time to be able to share with you from a perspective of residential school survivors. And hopefully this will light a fire amongst other survivors to come forth with their stories, even if it's just with their families, so that they can take this I guess you could say this load off of their minds and so forth. But that's entirely up to them as to how much they want to share of that, simply because a lot of times their parents or grandparents, they don't like to divulge these things as a means of preventing shock value for our young people and getting them all riled up regarding their reactions to it, as has happened with some of my grandchildren. They're a little mad about all this stuff and what has happened to myself and also the residential school survivors. So Blackfoot Crossing, we give you a very thankful thanks at this time. And all the staff there, Stephen and Candace and all the other people. There's a lot of people that are involved here at the Blackfoot Crossing Historic Park. And of course our technicians here, and I'll just turn it over to Vince. I may have forgotten some people regarding giving them some recognition here for allowing us to do this. Vince?
Yes, I just want to thank the sponsors of those that believe in First Nations and support First Nations, and thank you for contribute. Even though if it's small, it speaks volumes to us, and be nice if we have a big sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Bill Gates, somebody like that.
Yeah.
But we'll take whatever comes. So we thank you, and of course the government, and I don't know how much they give, and then of course our tribe here on the nation. I just want to thank the technicians, Shade and Dave. These are two individuals that work hard with the camera, with the mics, and making this room really soundproof. So soundproof, and I can hear Butch's heartbeat. doop, doop. So,
You can hear my phlegm.
so I just want to think. But today, what we want to talk about is truth and reconciliation. What does that mean? Truth and reconciliation is a buzzword right now. It's going all over. And the government of Canada designated September the 30th along with Orange Shirt Day. Next week we'll talk about Orange Shirt Day. But today we want to talk about truth and reconciliation. The government decided to put those together September the 30th and called it the Truth and Reconciliation Day. It has meanings to many different organizations, church and government. And what does it mean to us? What does it mean to the government? What does it mean to the churches? What does it mean to the general public out there? Why the truth and reconciliation? First of all, the truth is that they found 215 unmarked graves in Kamloops, BC, at the residential school there. And then not long after that, the truth is that they found over 700, I forget the exact number, at Cowes Indian Residential School on those properties, in those yards of those residential schools. Now the number has grown and grown, and someone said it's over 5,000 across Canada that they've discovered unmarked graves. Here in Siksika, they're going to start looking on the 24th. How many graves are unmarked graves, we don't know. But they're going to start looking on the 24th of this month. Now the truth is, I don't know if you read the report of Murray Sinclair and the group. They did a recommendation after the Truth and Reconciliation gave a final report to the government, and they gave 94 call to action. In other words, here's some things that they have to do. And one of those things was to find the unmarked graves. And the government never did anything about that. That was a recommendation. That was a call to action from that committee. And the truth was that there were some awful things that went on in residential school. A whole lot of things. Those were not fictional, those were not lies, but that was the truth. So when you corner somebody and you catch them with the truth, they either cover it up, they lie, or do whatever they can to not to face the truth. So, and what that is I think it's good. To me, those words are good. They need to deal with the truth. And there's two things about the truth. Either they can just continue to deny that it never existed, or they can come out and say, okay, yeah, it happened. And now what after that? And we have to be careful with that. As a result of that, the truth and reconciliation, there's a pot of money that's available. And someone said a lot of the money is going to universities. So we don't know, but that's what someone said to us. And you went to residential school. I went to residential school. I haven't seen anything from that. So it affects me, affects how I raise my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. So it affects all of us. And so there's things that the government has to reconcile with us. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is that they're slow in doing that. So what truth and reconciliation. That's what we're talking about today. And I think the people everywhere is thinking about that. What does that mean to us? So I'll let you talk a little bit about that, Butch, and we're always glad that Butch is here to help us out a little bit and give us some insights as to some of his thinking in regards to the topic of residential school. It's a heavy topic, very heavy, yeah.
Okay, talking again about sponsorship, I'll put this into context. Terry Fox, a well-known icon here in Canada regarding his run for across Canada, which sadly ended in just outside of Thunder Bay when he succumbed to cancer. And he being disabled with a prosthetic there and whatever, but he still made it that far. And so every September, and that's coming up again, they're going to be honoring the Terry Fox run for cancer. And cancer is a disease that is still affecting a lot of our people today. And so my late mother, she really looked up, she really felt really sad about what happened with Terry Fox. So it just kind of instilled in us to keep this young person in our minds. Now, just to give you an idea about sponsorship, Nike just made an announcement that they're coming out with a Terry Fox replica Adidas shoe in his honor. And the sponsorship of that by Nike is that all the shoes that are sold, every penny is going to cancer. And we talk about this orange shirt, I guess you could say memorabilia. Those are going around all over the place. Now, wouldn't it be something if somebody decided to do some shirts regarding this, and they donated 100% of the money that was made towards reconciliation in some form? And as my good friend here and brother and cousin Vincent has talked about, the thing about residential schools is there's a lot of people, there's a lot of talk out there. Truth has been uncovered to the point where now we can talk about residential schools as a form of genocide. And now we're dealing with some very international law regarding genocide. And the United Nations with their declaration, and Canada now beginning to act on some of those calls to action, and they're called to action for a reason, because there needs to be some action done with them, not just calls to talk about it. It's got to be more than talk. There's got to be some action. So there's a lot of residential school survivors which are at an age where they're going to pass on. And for some of them, I'd love to see them have at least a good quality of life before they pass away. And speaking from a personal standpoint, there are a lot of us that are suffering because of the cost and whatever of living nowadays, and the I guess you would say just our income is kind of set at a certain rate, but there's nothing to I guess you could say compensate us for being a part of that genocide, and we survived it. So in other words, we're still here, and that's something that even our own leaders need to take into consideration, because as Vincent said, there's a lot of agencies that are beginning to make some money off of this residential school. Universities are ramping up their awareness, their residential school information, their reaching out, but at the same time, they're going to make money on it. And that's sorry to hear that people are going to make money off this residential school. And we're just going to be left on the sidelines, the actual survivors, just watching this parade go by. And that's something that a lot of secondary institutions need to take into consideration. What are you willing to give regarding reconciliation towards survivors? And there's less of us than there were before, because a lot of our survivors that actually made it out of residential school ended up dying anyways, through addictions, through suicide, through disease, as a result of some of their poor choices in nutrition and not being able to deal with things on a, I guess you could say, on a healing basis. And I'm really thankful that for myself, speaking for myself, I've taken some personal steps to take care of these issues as far back as the 80s, when this was just something that the government was being told happened, and they just ignored it. But now it can't be ignored. So I just thought I'd look at a way just to compare. Nike doing their big thing for Terry Fox and the disease, and maybe there's some sponsors out there that would like to do something and make the standard of living, cost of living, be trickled down to the actual survivors, so that they can say, yeah, we've done what we can for that. And so there's a lot of things working against us. We're kind of left on the sidelines because our stories were told through other authors who made money off of those stories. And what kind of a give back was there ever done there? Was there ever done? My English is so crazy sometimes. But these are the truths. And I mean, sorry to say it, but sometimes our people do it to ourselves too. And they put us on the sidelines, and we can only watch. And because for us, truth is ni tsiu. It happened. It really happened. That's our way of looking at truth. And reconciliation, I think for me in Blackfoot, the closest word I can think of is atsimshkas.
Yeah.
Reconciliation. Atsimshkas means you've done some wrong to somebody. Now it's time to make up for that wrong. And so that's the Blackfoot word for reconciliation that I can think of. There might be other translations, but that's something that actually rings pretty close to home regarding reconciliation. So for those things that we've talked about in the past, reconciliation is going to take the effort of every single person out there. Those who are viewing this presentation, and those who are going to listen to it, and then they say, oh, they just want to make some money out of it. Well, geez, we were a part of that. It's about time, some time, and money was given to survivors to at least have a comfortable quality of life before they pass on. And also, we have this issue nowadays, and I'm not going to mince my words about it. We call them knowledge keepers, but they're the ones that learned these things from books and from recordings and whatever. And so that's something that we have to make use of, because they're the ones that are going to take our knowledge and take it into the future generation.
Yeah.
And that's a positive way of doing that, and making sure that the credit is given where credit is due regarding these stories. And so it's not a made-up thing. These are things that actually happened, no matter how ugly they may sound to the common person that has never experienced these kind of actions. So knowledge keepers have a role to play, and you are going to be very valuable once we're all gone. all the survivors are gone.
Yeah.
You're going to be our voice. And now's the time to start learning about it, listening, and documenting it. Putting it just like this webinar is going to last forever. 50 years from now, my great-granddaughter will be 51 years old, and she may even take a look at me talking here and know that she knows a lot more about the residential schools than people in my younger days. So I just thought I'd put that out there. We have a lot of resources, but it needs to be our resources, not somebody who's going to make some money off of us. Now that it has become has come to the public forum. Ken, tako na way da po kita.
Ken, you know, I appreciate what Butch is saying. I think the Truth and Reconciliation that came up, there's 94 calls to action. Really what it boils down to it, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of work. By whom? And I think the truth of the matter is that me and Butch went to residential school. I went to residential school, and it wasn't a good experience. And I say that in my stories when I'm asked to talk about residential school, the experience that I went through in residential school. It was something that really destroyed my thinking, my way of it created some things that were foreign, and I didn't have those when I was at home with the family, but in residential school it all changed, and I came out of there not the same person, and that's the truth. And the fact of the matter is that there were some awful things that took place in residential school. And the truth is that when people talk about being sexually abused, that did happen. We kind of skimp over that. We don't want to talk about it. We stay away from it, and we don't like to hear about it. And we're almost contributing to hiding those things that did happen at residential school. And the fact of the matter is, it did happen. And it did happen to some students that went through some terrible things at residential school. And I'm one of them. And that's the truth. And it made me the kind of a monster that I didn't know why this was happening in my life. And there were some awful things that took place. I remembered when I got older, and I almost died because of alcohol and so forth. The drugs wasn't so prevalent as it is today. But in the early and late 60s, there was a lot of alcohol. So I was right involved with that in the early 70s, and it almost destroyed my life. But I changed my life. And I found something that really helped me to focus and bettering my life, bettering myself, and deal with the anger, deal with the frustrations that I had hidden. And the thing about it, here's the truth. I never talked about what happened to me in residential school when I was 20 years old, when I was 30 years old, when I was 40 years old, when I was 50 years old. It was later that I started opening up. And that's the truth. And so when you cover something, it destroys you, and if something bad happened to you, and if you don't deal with it, it just stays in there. You don't know how to deal with it because you never allowed someone else to reach in there to help you to how to be able to think in a good way. And so that never happened. But anyways, when I changed my life around to get myself better in a good way, one of the priests in residential school, there was an article that was captured by a reporter, a religious magazine. I can't remember what it. I think it was called Billy Graham Evangelistic something. Decision magazine. I can't remember. But anyways, one of the priests at Ocean School wrote me a letter. And in that letter, he said to me, I am so sorry what I did to me. He said, I'm sorry, Vincent, what I did to you. And that I saw that letter, and it took me a long time to share that letter publicly, because I didn't know, because I wasn't healed. I still had that thing that was covered up in here, and it took me a long time, and it just continues to destroy. The reason I say that is that we have so many people across Canada, First Nation people across Canada, that haven't found how the resources, the help that they need to be able to dig in and to find out, hey, we can help you with this. We can, the truth is that they're just left on their own. That's the truth. That's the result of residential school. They become angry, they become frustrated, and they go to things that are tangible to them and available to them, which is alcohol, which is drugs, and so forth. And they don't know how to deal with their relationships with their wives and their husbands and so forth. And therefore, you have a lot of broken homes, and the children are not raised in a good environment because of that. Because we were taken away from our homes when we were only 5 years old. That's the truth. I was one of them. And we were locked up in that institution. And when you say something, when I hear somebody say, oh, it was okay at residential school for me, we're allowing these people not to see the harm that took place. They'll listen to all the things that happened to students like me when I was in residential school. And they'll hear all the horror that took place of all these students that went to residential school, all the survivors. But one person says, oh, I was okay in residential school. You know what? At the end of the day, they're going to capture that one person. Nothing happened to them. So what does that mean? The truth is, there again, they don't want to deal with it. Or no, we had one student of how many, that said they never had a bad experience at residential school. What about all the others? That's the truth. I'm talking some truth here.
Yeah.
The truth is that they will take that one good, positive experience in residential school and say, oh, it didn't happen. So, so it makes them think that they don't have to reconcile. That's the truth. And reconciliation means we got to reconcile with someone, like what you said it in Blackfoot. You need to come together and own up the harm that took place. And so I get frustrated. I get pretty mad, and it's almost like the fancy word that people use. They like to sugarcoat things, and which is not true. Then if it was all good, Why all the dysfunction that's going on? Why all the suicides going on? Why all the addictions going on? Why all these things that are going on and on and on and on? And residential school had a lot to do with it. They were taken from their homes forcefully, and they were trying to go back home. And the staff at those schools said, if you take your children back, we're going to take them away, you're going to go to jail. I remembered my mom and the older people saying, "Taku tuyo kiutspinna. Niksi napi koiksavani taku tuyo kiuts." They were told, you're going to go to jail if you didn't release your son back to residential school. That's the truth. There were lies. And the truth of the matter, which is written down in their own documents. In the 1800s, when Duncan Campbell Scott said, we're going to kill the Indian in the child, that means they were going to destroy the Indian in us. They were going to destroy our language. They were going to take away our culture. They were going to destroy our values. They were going to destroy. And that's the truth. So many things. So many things. I'd like somebody to come on all that millions of dollars that you're talking about, Butch. I'd like somebody to come to me and say to me, okay, Vincent, I want to know about some of the values that were destroyed. So I tell them all that story, and then who gets the money out of that? Maybe I'll get a cup of coffee out of it. So, I'm frustrated about it. I'm the one that the harm was done to, and you're right, we don't see it, we just see the parade go by. We're mad about it, and it has happened again and then again, and some of these people that are receiving those money, they didn't give, well, I don't want to say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Settle down.
Settle down.
Settle down.
But the thing about it is, now that it's all, there happened, you know what's the difference, Butch? The fact of the matter and the truth is, these guys are good proposal writers. Mm-hmm. They're excellent. They sit in their computers all day, they float and they surf the internet, and they find, I can put a proposal together. And we don't have that. I'm a survivor. I don't need that. I don't have that luxury to have somebody to, and that's what's missing. And you know what? I like to bring some of that and help our children to learn the values of who we are, Siksika people. We were strong, very strong. And we had good teachers back then. And we had ceremonial people that were very faithful to the practices here, and those kind of things were put to. They hit it, mm-hmm. And that's what happened. So, anyways, we got a long ways to go. A lot of work needs to be done with residential school.
Just to bring it back to reconciliation that I had talked about. Giving some form of compensation for the residential school. We got a little, but it was so minuscule that it was kind of laughable. But what can you do? At the time, that was the only understanding the government had. Just like, for example, my late father, Mark Wolfleg Jr., a senior, sorry, he served with the loyal 49th Edmonton Regiment and was in action in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. And he got his medals. In fact, he's honored here at the Blackwood Crossing Historical Park on our Veterans Wall. And he never got a pension. Nothing from the Army, from Veterans Affairs. All veterans were given land, some what they were called resettlement loans, given some machinery to start a business, farming, ranching, whatever, and my dad never received a cent. And until the early 50s, he started getting $25 a month. And even from that $25 a month, we were penalized as his children because they would give school supplies to us, to the students when they were going to school. But for our family, the children in my family, we never got those. My dad had to pay for those because they said he was getting a pension. In fact, he was penalized at that point for having a pension, meager $25. And then about almost 60 years after the end of World War II, they gave him a payout of $20,000, which is so, when you prorate it back to 1945 when he was discharged from the Army, that's a pittance to allow him at this late stage in his life to actually, he never got a chance to really enjoy a quality of life, to be compensated properly by Veterans Affairs. And now with us, reconciliation. You talk about, I don't mind saying it, but some people have made fun of it. In fact, a lot of non-native people have said, well, you just want some money out of this thing. Well, you guys do the same thing too in court. When you're wronged, you go and sue somebody. You start a civil suit and you go for the biggest money you can get. And nobody tells you you're just in this for the money, because that's the point of it. And that's where we are at this point in time. I'm just saying, look at it from our standpoint. The wrong was done, the truth is there. What have we been compensated for? And it was the work between the federal government, the provinces, RCMP, the non-native communities, just swept it under the carpet. Now it's not under the carpet anymore. It's all over. And, what if we did decide to go for a civil lawsuit and we took RCMP to court, the province, federal government, even the Queen, taking him to I'd love to see a lawyer take that on and see what kind of money we're talking about then. But that's something that's, I'm just comparing. When people say, I just want to get some money out of it. Well, sure. I'd love to have a good quality of life before I kick the bucket, so to speak, and something to leave for my children and grandchildren as a result of this truth that has happened in residential school. So I'll say it out. I'll say, yeah. I'm in it for the money. See what happens. We see what kind of reconciliation, because that's what the federal government, the regional government, that's what they understand. That's what's understood in court when you go and sue somebody for doing something wrong to you, or a civil suit when a whole bunch of people are done wrong.
Yeah.
So just thought I'd mention that, where it's not a whole different concept.
And what we could call this section of our video, the truth and reconciliation, what it means to two survivors.
Yeah.
That's what it means to us, truth and reconciliation. Because when you're talking about the truth of the matter is we were there and we saw what happened and we experienced those things ourselves. One of the things that I know we're running out of time again, Butch.
Yeah.
So we've got to cut it down. But one of the things that I get frustrated is that when I go and speak at different organizations, churches and so forth, and somebody, these are Caucasian. I don't know what's the correct term to call them. But anyways, Caucasians, but in residential school, we call them white people. So when I go speak to these organizations, and the white people would come and talk to me and say, oh, it's not me. I wasn't there in the 1800s. I had nothing to do with it. That frustrates me. It's they're living the benefits of the decisions that took place back then. And those laws that were written back then are still much in existence. So if they're saying they're not the recipients of the harm that was done, but you are sure happy that those laws were written down, so you can benefit from those laws and legislations that took place in the 1800s and then early 1900s. Those laws exist, and you're benefiting from that. But I don't want to get political with some of them. And so they don't have a clue, you know? They don't have a clue what took place. That's the truth. So we need to educate them. The more we educate these, if there's one guy there, just one little white girl listening to us, one little white boy listening to us, and you go home and say, Mom and Dad, I heard these two survivors talking about truth and reconciliation in their own way. We got no books in front of us, no computers in front of us. We're talking from our heart what truth and reconciliation means to us. And so we're saying to you that it was bad. It happened to us. And if you do the research and if you find out the harm and you look at all the legislations that took place, and when somebody says from that, the Caucasian clan, you can tell them, haha, but you benefit from the legislation that took place back then. So you got any final words, Butch?
No, not. I just wanted to make sure that people understood truth and reconciliation from our standpoint. And I think somewhere down the road, I hope to be able to live that long, that somebody doesn't say an idiotic thing to me and say, go back to your land. Because all of this is our land. Yeah. Or somebody to say, oh, you just want some more money. And I'll say, if I never hear that again, that would mean that there's some action being taken by individuals to their families, to their community, and the nation as a whole here in Canada. And I forgot to say the civil suit would include the churches and stuff, so.
Yeah.
All right.
So, just want to thank you guys once again, and like we've always said from the beginning, this is a heavy subject, and the Alberta government, the federal government, they'll say, oh, we don't want to teach that to the young kids, they were too young. Mm-hmm. But you know what happened? The truth of the matter, they did that to us when we were 5 years old, mm-hmm. when we were sick. They didn't say, oh, they're too young. Leave them at home, they're too young. We don't want to destroy them, they're too young. But now when we're saying these things, they're saying, no, don't teach that at elementary. It's too big for them to handle. But they didn't think about that that's the truth. Mm-hmm. When we were young, taking us away from our family and destroying who we are, Siksika people, mm-hmm. as me as a Siksika member. So I just want to thank you guys, and the truth is, once people grasp that word, get a full understanding of what truth is, it's going to set you free. It'll set you free.
And September 30th is the day of Truth and Reconciliation. It's being taken as a national holiday, except by 2 provinces. One of them is our home province right here in Alberta. So that says a lot. Just thought I'd mention it.
A lot of volumes, says a lot. And we need to reconcile. We need to come together and reconcile to each other. That would be really good. I'd like to see that happen. Mm. And I think that's the only way that we can get along in society, when we can respect each other and appreciate each other, and the harm that took place, we can grow together and make the world a better place. That's what we want, yeah. for us and for our children, everybody. Thank you.